Alright, I know this video is long overdue, but there were some things about this game that bothered me, and I couldn't really figure out what it was for the longest time. So now that I have my thoughts together, let's put this game to rest. After hours of sneaking around and perfecting my aim, I finished playing through the main levels of Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2. And just like the title, the game isn't exactly an easy one to talk about, so for simplicity, we're just going to call it Contracts 2 from now on. For those unaware, Contracts 2 focuses primarily on long-range sniping, where you have to account for both gravity and air direction. In the game, you play as Raven, an assassin hired to take down a list of bosses that plan to overtake a country in the Middle East. Raven goes through each mission, landing long-range shots with his high-tech mask. And nothing spells accuracy like looking through a highly magnified optic through a mask.
You missed.
I can see that. Along with this, you will also have to get up close and infiltrate various strongholds to sabotage the enemy, retrieve intel, and more. It's not entirely accurate in regards to what a real-world sniper would have to deal with, as it is a one-man army type of game. I think the best way to start talking about this game is by addressing its AI. Sure, we can talk about how fun it is to use a sniper rifle and perfectly time your shots, but we'll get to that. But the AI in this game is where it can fall apart at times. In general, the game has a similar approach to Hitman, where the actual combat outside of using the sniper that is quite basic and never really challenging. So if you do play the game as intended and only go for stealth kills and sniping kills, then the game works great. But if you raise an alarm, enemies will start rushing towards your location, and one shot to the head with your sidearm is enough to put most of them down. Oh, they heard that. Awesome.
Waiting orders clear. Roger that. Alerting nearby sectors.
Oh, gotta reload.
Copy. Report when Tango is down. Out.
The exception being the padded juggernaut sporting an LMG.
Still on recon. Understood.
If you do get tired of one-shotting these enemies while the alarms are going off, you could also set traps with proximity mines or C4 for added flair. The problem here is that there seems to only be two enemy types when it comes to armor. Either they have the basic armor that does not protect their head, or they're a juggernaut that will be difficult to deal with unless you ignore or blow them up. Take for instance in Payday 2, where there are several varieties of enemies, where they have extra padding, a helmet that takes multiple shots, and so on. Having different enemy types like this would make Contracts 2 more dynamic. Instead of being able to take down every soldier the same exact way, you'll have to be a little more crafty and even have to use some special armor-piercing ammo to keep on with one-shotting certain soldiers. Or you can find a way to bypass them entirely. Speaking of armor-piercing ammo, the game does have some special ammo that you can equip. With the aforementioned armor-piercing ammo designed to one-shot juggernauts, there is also a lure shot to have a nearby soldier go to a more favorable location. There's also a non-lethal tagging shot so you can track enemies at any given time. There's an explosive round which would help with taking down vehicles, and an EMP round to disable electronic and vehicles. Lastly, there is another round called Agile, which ignores gravity and wind, so basically a sure shot round for any tricky targets. With all of these ammo types to choose from, they're not all available out of the box. It will depend on which sniper rifle you decide to use, and then you can only take two of these ammo types with you with no real way to refill them. Instead, you can upgrade the rifle to carry more of that special ammo with you. And as someone who is paranoid with resource management, I tend to not really use this special ammo. The only ammo type that I did run with was armor piercing to get rid of a few juggernauts. In the game's loadout, you can take 3 weapons with you, your sniper, your rifle, and a sidearm. There were very few instances where using a rifle was ever necessary, and the sidearm was more than enough to sneak around while infiltrating the enemy base. In short, since there's only 2 armor types that soldiers have, you're not really forced to take any one type of weapon with you. This allows for more flexibility, but it does lower the difficulty of the game overall. If you play this game like if it was Splinter, Hitman, or an older Ghost Recon game, you'll get the basic idea of what it's trying to do. Just that instead of having it be an instant failure when the alarms go off, you may still be able to salvage the attempt and take down the target anyways. But if you are trying to play with proper stealth and not trigger any alarms, then that's when the game can become a nightmare. Up to this point, you may think that the game is a walk in the park, and it can be if you decide to go all out like an 80s action flick. However, the AI is so quick to set up alarms, it can be very frustrating if you're trying to do things stealthily. Okay, apparently that's still 100 meters.
Papa 8 to base. We have a hostile sniper awaiting orders.
And dang it.
Copy. Take up defensive positions.
No, last save. To go along with this, there are certain missions that require you to kill a target at range with your sniper rifle. So if you do set up an alarm, the target will go into hiding and may even leave the area, which will terminate the attempt. Also, once one guard is alerted, everyone else is alerted at the same time. There is a very small window of opportunity to take down that guard, but chances are the alarm will sound off before you can line up the next shot. Since there are no alarm boxes or radios that they have to run to call it in, it adds what I think is an artificial challenge to every shot. The delay from the soldier being alerted to everyone else doesn't seem intentional, it seems like it's supposed to happen instantly. They don't sit in a corner to radio it in, it just happens right there and then. Not only do you need to land your first shot, but you need to deal with every enemy in a certain order. That order can also change slightly due to the routes and pathing the AI takes. This is perfectly fine as it adds variety and lets you decide how aggressive you want to be. After watching the paths, you just figure out which opportunity you prefer and hope you don't miss. And if you do miss, then you have to hope they don't instantly set off alarms. Although it can be tricky and at sometimes feeling almost unfair, the game has an autosave feature and a way to load up previous autosaves so you can reset and try again. With the autosave feature, some progress will be reverted and it may not have saved as soon as you would have liked, but it does beat having to reload the entire mission all over again. The game would benefit from a quick save feature, as sometimes an autosave can either be done just as you had set off an alarm or going way back to just where you got to the location, meaning you would have to clear out a few patrols all over again. There is also no real penalty for loading a previous save, as any challenges you completed will still count, and just for clarity, there is no quick save option. Alright, so now that we're playing the game properly, let's talk about sniping. This is by far the strongest aspect of the game, as you could imagine. Playing on the easier difficulties, the game gives you some indicators, allowing you to place your shots accurately, and you can also turn those off if you wish. There is little room for error when landing a fatal shot, more so if you decide to equip a lighter sniper rifle that deals less damage, making headshots even more valuable to guarantee a kill. Once you fired your shot, it will take some time for the bullet to actually arrive on target, and unless you do get a kill cam, you have to sit there in suspense hoping you did it right. It is fun to watch those kill cams more times than not, but I would like to have it turned off entirely. Unfortunately, you can only set it to show up less often. If you're replaying the game or trying for some specific challenges, you don't really need the kill cam, as it will just take longer to complete the challenge, only for you to reload a save point and then end up watching a kill cam again on your next successful hit. The kill cams are well made and directed, and I do like viewing them on my first playthrough. But for the replayability and going back to finish off these challenges, I'd rather not have them be there. It's a nitpick at the end of the day, but one that can be annoying if you're trying to 100% the game. Unlike the game's competitor, the Sniper Elite series developed by Rebellion, there are no X-ray kill cams, which honestly does make this game feel a little cheaper. I'm not expecting an exact carbon copy of the X-ray system, but I would have liked to see some more detail with this. If you're going to force me to watch kill cams, I would like them to be a little more dynamic. Be it something like a more basic X-ray system, some sort of ragdoll, or something like the armor or clothing to rip and tear. The only dynamic kill shots there are in this game comes from headshots. And while the headshots are still very satisfying to pull off at any range, the head melting effect is the same with little if any difference. So we can't turn them off, at least let me fast forward through them like in Max Payne 3. Now why should you play Contracts 2 instead of Sniper Elite? Well, all of the Sniper Elite games are based in World War II, so while they may have more polish in other ways, the game is still limited to that World War II setting. If you want a sniping centered game with modern equipment, Contracts 2 fills that gap. Regardless, the sniping feels very rewarding once you get the hang of it, and the rest becomes a game of sit and wait for your opportunity to take down your targets. Along with this, there are explosive barrels, and you can even fire a shot at a grenade belt an enemy is wearing and blow them up. But it does trigger the alarm instantly, so while flashy, it's something you can't always get away with. One other thing to mention is that the game does not have multiplayer or co-op. I feel a game with missions as large and complex as they are could benefit from a co-op mode. I would even take it a step further and create some small and quick co-op missions. Either way, a lack of two-player co-op feels like a missed opportunity, allowing one person to run Overwatch while the other gets up close and grabs intel, or coordinating a timed shot to take down two guards at the same time. The missions in the game are split up between two contract types. The first one being long-range contracts, which will require you to take down your target at 1,000 meters or more, while you sneak around a few nearby patrols between each location. And the second set of missions are a more classic style, where you navigate around enemy patrols and have the option of taking down your target at any range, or sneaking inside, bypassing security to take them out up close and personal. Time things right, and you can even interrogate your targets, so when doing so they have their own unique dialogue, but nothing else seems to come from it. It's a nice touch overall. On that note, let's talk about the story. Well, there isn't really one. Outside of the one sentence I said back at the beginning of this video, there's nothing that's interesting about the story itself. Again, the situation is that there's a group working together to overthrow a country in the Middle East. However, you're attacking these leaders at their home turf. So instead of disrupting or sabotaging an attack, you're stopping them before they even have a chance to do so. The situation just feels too perfect to make for a fun and dynamic story. The premise itself has a lot of potential, but since you're just assassinating them before anything actually happened or after the fact, there's a lot less weight and urgency to complete the mission. Take for instance Splinter Cell Pandora tomorrow. There's a short level where you have to stop a target while on a train, and many levels in that game are on home turf before anything happened. They still did find a way to include levels where you have to stop a threat that's in progress or reach a target before they get to their destination. And this train of thought is when I was able to find a revelation as to why I have some issues with the game. If we ignore some of the less polished kill cams, the AI that can be either too alert or too oblivious, we still end up with levels that all play the same way. Sure, the mission objective and map design is different and still fun to play through, but it's the same setup each time. Go here, sabotage something, grab intel, kill a target, and leave. It's not that the formula is bad, but the game does little if anything to mix things up outside of the formula. For example, there are no joint missions, so you're on your own for every one of them. The only time you do technically team up with someone is when you're saving a journalist in a classic and frustrating escort mission. I tagged him.
No need to be discreet now. Secure the prisoner at all costs.
Oh my dear lord, this game.
No need to be discreet now.
Oh, hit her.
It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Goodbye, everyone. I'll remember you all in therapy.
But besides that, nothing else. There's no mission that's actively preventing an attack or taking down a target in a unique way. The game does have optional challenges to take down a target in some specific ways, but unless you read through the list of challenges, there's no real incentive to do so. Along with this, there's no pacification option in the game, you just stab and kill soldiers anyways when you interrogate them. It's not really a big deal, but I would like to have that kind of option just for the sake of variety. For a game that feels somewhat dated in regards to a story and gameplay, I do feel they could borrow more from these older games to keep it interesting. Include some added elements that are part of the game itself. Just a side tangent here, there's a skill tree you could level up with, but there are no skills or perks listed on there that would be required to beat the game. Much like how this section here is on the story side of the script, it feels more like an afterthought and just something to make the game easier if you really wanted to. Or just leave it there until after your first playthrough to make collecting and challenges easier. If they do decide to add some more unique gameplay elements, I do hope it's something that evolves the gameplay a little more, and not something that's an afterthought to make the game easier. Going back to the story, again, it's too perfect of a situation. There's no conflicting intel that Raven runs into, or some sort of alert that forces everyone to change their plans. The missions in the game don't change at all, regardless what order you complete them in the level. There's a lack of dynamic storytelling and punishment if you do go loud for the rest of the level. Right now, if you complete a mission but you went guns blazing, the next mission area will have no clue you're nearby. While it does give players a break from having to be completely stealthy, there is no long-term punishment on the player for doing so. What I feel the game should do is this. If you finish one objective before another, that it could change the patrols or location of the target. Instead of each mission in a level feeling like its own little segment, that it affects the rest of the level as well. And the more stealthy you are with your approach, the less likely anything changes. Actually punish the players who do go loud throughout the rest of the level. Because the game really wants to provide that sandbox design of taking on a mission, it leaves the regular parts of each mission to feel samey. Discovering these different routes and being smart on your approach is great, but once you realize that's all the game wants you to do, these missions feel like a walk in the park. So, if you just want to play through the game and disregard the challenges, it's still fun, but there's no real surprises waiting for you. It's just a matter of time before you figure it out. I do like the different kinds of challenges each mission has, with the long-range contracts requiring you to be very decisive with every shot you take, while the traditional contracts bring you back to an older style of infiltrating enemy lines to complete your mission. So while there may only be 6 regions in the game, it's more like 12 or 15 required missions, plus any optional mission in each region. This makes up for about 12 to 15 hours worth of playtime within my first playthrough, with each region taking about 3 hours to complete on average. If you do try to 100% the game, some challenges will require you to replay them, as not every challenge could be done in one attempt. At the same time, some levels will have a challenge to complete all of the challenges in that region in one go. Depending on how easy or hard you make it for yourself, completing all the challenges and collectibles I would say may bump up your playtime to around 30 hours total. So if you were to try and rate this game, I actually do have to separate that score a little bit. The score for the story itself is about a 5 out of 10. There's a lot of potential that could have made the enemies more interesting, but there's no exploring those characters. They're just there to get shot down. It's a shame, but they have less personality than the villains in Watch Dogs Legion. If we grade the game on its gameplay, it's a 7 out of 10. I enjoy stealth games and calculated sniping that's closer to a real-world example. However, with the rest of the gameplay being very basic and serviceable, it doesn't really stand out or try too much to make the AI, the enemies, or close quarters combat unique. So overall, the game itself, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. I have to rate it over Watch Dogs Legion, but by a very slim margin. There's far less cringe, the game is shorter and cheaper than Legion, and the gameplay, although maybe basic in some areas, excels with the sniping elements, which is what the game was designed to do. While in Legion, you're never really told what kind of mission you're about to start, and whether or not the characters you're using will actually have the tools required to survive the mission. It's less cohesive than Contracts 2 in my opinion. Do keep in mind, these are 2 very different games, so if you want a story-centered game with hours of playtime, Legion is the better option. But just purely from gameplay and how it gels throughout, Contracts 2 is more consistent with what it's trying to do. So that is my final thoughts for this game. Let me know what you guys think and whether or not you enjoyed the game yourself. Until then, I am Mr. Rain, and I will see you in the next one.